How you doing, everyone? Colin Egglesfield here. Welcome to Season 6 of Coffee with Colin. I am your host, Colin Egglesfield, and on this show, I love to interview my guests about what their dreams are, what their goals are, what are the challenges that they faced along their journey and how they overcame them. I like to talk about success and everything that has culminated into creating who they are and what they are all about and what impact that they want to have on the world. And I can't wait to introduce you to my next guest. He is someone who likes to go very fast. I am excited to be asking him about what it's like to be driving 200 miles an hour with your hair on fire and what are the dangers of it, what he loves about it, and what he's learned from his career in racing that he's been doing since the age of 5 years old. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the world famous and really cool guy, Mr. Ryan Phinny. What's up, brother? How
Thanks,
you doing?
man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. No, I'm happy to do it. It's been fun. I mean, every once in a while you meet people, you just kind of click, and that was the deal. We had a great time, and also you've been having a good time in Nashville. We
just moved here, a few years ago?
Yeah. So I first got here and kind of end of 2018. I had a buddy that was here, and I was like coming to check it out. I was like, I actually really dig this. Yeah. And I was in LA, and I think the burnout was like starting. And I had always, just because of racing, spent a lot of time in the Midwest, and I really always liked the people. And so my big motivation on coming here was actually really people and kind of the community and everything else. And I mean, the time that I've been here, this place has changed dramatically, but no, it's a really great place to live. I've been ecstatic about it. But no, I mean, you've had a good time the past couple nights, so yeah, there's never something not to do.
It's definitely the culmination of artistry with all the talented musicians that are out here, and then also just it's got that kind of hometown feel about it, where just good people, great food, great restaurants.
Yep.
And I could see why a lot of people have moved here over the past few years, because it definitely is a place that seems like a great place to raise a family, but then also has a taste of everything you want. That is more on the artistic side of things. There's a studio you mentioned that was going to be like a filming studio that was going to be.
So there's
built
a couple sound
soon,
stages
right?
here that are here already, and they were filming some shows. I think Kelly Pickler was doing her show there, and a couple other people have done it. I'm sure that when they were filming Nashville, they were doing it here. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more entertainment coming here.
Yeah.
And I know guys are they're putting in a bunch of work up there.
Yeah.
I think it's like 20 minutes north of town. It's not too far. So
yeah, definitely a cool
exciting
buzz going on in this town. The reason why I am here is because as a brand ambassador for R3 Stem Cell, we actually train doctors and nurses and other providers on how to administer stem cell therapy to their patients. R3 has a clinic here in Nashville as well as in Scottsdale. And so as a brand ambassador, I go to the trainings and I film, do social media. I interview some of the doctors and some of the patients that receive stem cell therapy. So that's the main reason why I'm here. Have you ever done any stem cell therapy yourself?
No, I have not.
No?
But I know people that have. And actually, I had an uncle who tore I think it was his Achilles or whatever. And I actually ended up learning about after he got it done, and it helped him a lot. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Stem cell therapy is the absolute game changer in terms of health and wellness and anti-aging. And as someone who goes 430,000 miles per hour, I'm sure you've had your run-ins with some injuries in your career, because I've
been racing
since 5. You said 5 years old.
Yeah. So I mean, I started racing go-karts when I was 5, and then essentially, I mean, I got into it early, and then I think I started racing. Yeah. So first got the go-kart around 5, and then started getting into the racing side of it when I was like 6, and did pretty much everything in karting that you could ever do. And truthfully, I mean, karting is still like the rawest form of it. I still do go-karting. Every driver does. It's kind of like it's great training. If the physicality of it, like everything about it's just raw. It's like it's a blast. I mean, the karts move. It's basically just slow.
A metal box with wheels. And
no, oh my God, there's so much tech in them now and everything.
Oh,
and the way that, I mean, there's like different alloys and like measurements and how they do everything is super scientific. And it's in a go-kart. It's crazy to think about, but it's the whole purpose of it is to train you for a race car. And that's exactly what it does. And you learn about, making changes on it, the feedback that comes from it. But yeah, I mean, it's still a great way to do it. I still jump in go-karts from time to time. It's great training.
Yeah. And so one of these things similar to, I would say, acting, growing up, I grew up outside of Chicago. I'm from Michigan. Would always hear about the Detroit Grand Prix. And, as a little kid, I was always fascinated with, race cars, and I had my Hot Wheels cars that I would always play with. I used to build model cars growing up. But when I would watch the Indy 500, it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, that would be so cool to do one day. But the idea of like even knowing how to get into race car driving or anything like that, it's similar to, I would imagine, acting. When people look at TV shows and film, they're like, wow, that would be cool to do. But I'm just, so-and-so from small town USA.
Well, I'll give you kind of the rundown about
how
racing
did you get
works.
into it?
So I started obviously when I was really young. My dad was into cars, the whole thing. And I just kind of had a love for it. I was around the racetrack a lot. I was, from an early age, and then I wanted to do it. So my dad was trying to figure out how do we, get him into it, and go-karts was the way.
When you were around it, was he doing it himself, or was he just
more as like a hobby?
It was like as
fun. Yeah. It was like a hobby for him at the end. And he, he ran in the 80s long before I was, around. He was actually like seriously racing and everything. But my dad's always
Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Northern California.
Okay.
But born in SoCal, grew up in NorCal. But my dad was a restaurateur, has been since, mid 70s. And so racing was always kind of like secondary fun hobby kind of thing. And, it's tough. And I'll give you kind of the rundown why, my decision, which you've already heard, and some stuff that, like what I'm doing kind of, with the future and everything. But the sport's definitely changed a lot over the years. And getting into it is now, that kind of, the bar is high, and financially very high, and it's not quite what it used to be. And so, for me, you're always, as a driver now, it's not just about driving anymore. I mean, you're focusing on the business side of it way more than the driving side, because at the end of the day, you're driving, 2% of the time, and the other 98% of the time is making sure you're getting in the car. And that's one of those things that's tough, is you go back and you sit and you think about the business side of it, and it's like, Jesus, like you're trying to, you want to focus on the driving, and you can't, because and it makes it difficult.
Needing to raise money with sponsorships
all day long
to get all those stickers and labels on the car. That's what keeps you going.
It is definitely what keeps you going. And it's a tough thing to do. And, so for me recently, as you already know, I decided, as of March that, and then finally, not too long ago, I'd started the process in March, I should say. And, I kind of was weighing out my options and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And if I wanted to continue kind of the grind. I mean, I was putting in 18 to 20 hour days, no joke, on the computer and like on my phone, like calls, emails, decks.
Trying to raise money.
Yep. Doing the
sponsorships.
Stuff. Yep.
And then, so how much of your day was focused to the sponsorships, and how much was focused on actually training and actually?
Yeah, I would always find time to work out. You got to do that. Yeah. But it's, when I'm sitting there in a workout, like on the Peloton, and I'm like sitting there scrolling LinkedIn, doing stuff like this, trying to work on the next angle or getting stuff sent to me. And, I kind of hit like the breaking point. I was like, is it worth it anymore? And is it worth the sacrifices in your personal life for me anymore? And at 33, it's one of those things where I just kind of came to the realization. I said, you know what? I think for now, the pursuit of full-time in racing is just is not for me right now. And so I'm actually, it's like a big weight's been lifted, and taking a step back from that. And my goal is I'm actually going to do something outside of racing. But what I'm doing is still going to involve a lot of my relationships that I've had since I was really young. And I'll announce what I'm doing soon enough. Right now
You don't want to announce it here on Coffee with Colin?
I'll soon enough. I mean, I'm just getting settled and getting into it.
Here of 1 million people watching right now.
I love that. But no, I mean, I'm just getting settled into it right now, and it's already been fun. It's been a great change, and one of the things that I do plan on doing, and that's why I wanted to do this with you, is I want to kind of show a lot of other athletes. There's a lot of other drivers that have been in my position. You come out of racing and you're like, what the hell do I do? Or guys that retire from sports and they're just like, they're kind of lost, things like that. There's one thing about being an athlete and doing these things and racing and being a part of it your whole life, is that you have a skill set and you have like a work ethic for sure, but you have an experience that realistically not very many people have. And at the end of the day, that's valuable. And luckily there's some people that saw a lot of value in my relationships, my experiences, both on the track and off, and what it took to get on the track. But ultimately, I sat back and it was, so 2022 last year was kind of like a comeback year for me is in racing. So going into 2020, I had a killer deal set up. We were sponsor contracts in place, team lined up, ready to go, the whole thing. Everyone was happy. And unfortunately, COVID hit. The world stopped, and never in a million years would I have seen an act of God clause used in any contract.
Like,
but
how could you? Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting. It's, that was kind of the first time that I had felt like the weight, was lifted. And because I didn't have racing in my life every day, but neither did anybody else. So it was there was nothing I could do. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was living it, was that I was happy. Like, that was great. There was no grind about sponsors. There was no, working on that kind of stuff. It was like, for the first time I could take a step back. And sure enough, after a year of essentially being off like that, you start to get back into racing and you work on 2021. And then for me, going into 2022 was like, it was a big deal.
A new perspective.
Yeah. Cause I came back into the sport, at Indianapolis on the road course there, and had a lot of great like partners. The Predators partnered up with me here in town, and a lot of people kind of came to my side and, came to help me and everything. And, and I appreciated everything they did, and I'm still love those relationships. I mean, they're killer, but, I think that, I kind of started to lose sight of who I was as a person because I was so
focused on racing, sponsorships. And that's something that I like to talk about on the show. In terms of finding out what you love to do, for me, it was acting. I discovered acting at kind of a later time in my life, at 24 years old. And fortunately, you were able to find something that you love to do at an early age. Yeah. But when you do find, regardless of how old you are, when you do find that thing that you love to do, that you're passionate about, the thing that is important it took me a while to learn this, was that even though for me, it was acting. So I focused on going to acting classes and studying the craft of acting and how to break down a character and all the technical aspects that go along with the artistry and the craft of acting. What I wasn't aware of, or what I was aware of it, but it was the business side of acting. And it's crazy because it's show business, right? But as artists, I think we can get singularly focused on the craft. And so that's all I did. And then my mindset was, well, I've got my agent, I've got my manager. They're the experts. And I think sometimes we can push responsibility off to other people when it's our career. No one knows us better than we know ourselves. And the thing that I had to learn was, if I really wanted to continue on in this business, I had to start creating mastery around the business side of it, creating my own projects, going out networking, which was not something that I was comfortable doing. I've always been kind of shy and introverted. So sometimes or a lot of the times, it requires you getting out of your comfort zone to start doing the things that you wouldn't normally think you need to do in order to take your career or your life to the next level. But it sounds like with race car driving, you had to, at a very early age, get out and talk to people, find sponsorships. And that's not always the case, because there's some race car drivers out there who are the sons of established race car drivers who they have the sponsorships in place.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, because I'm sure there's a lot of super talented race car drivers out there, as similarly as there's super talented actors who were in my acting classes, who were brilliant actors, who were like Academy Award nominated or could be Academy Award winning actors, but they just didn't want to take on learning the business side of it, and because of it, they're now out of acting. So was it your father, or did you have like a mentor that was like, listen, you are talented at what you do, but if you want to go to that next level in your life, you've got to start mastering all the component parts of race car driving, number one being the sponsorship side of it?
Yeah, I mean, so the focus early on in karting is you really getting your bearings, learning about, how to, feel what the car or the cart at that point is doing. And that's how you learn. That's how, you can come in, talk to your engineers and change things. I was really lucky. I got to work with early on. My driver coach was a guy named Joey Hand, who's a Le Mans winner now, bunch of stuff. And I kind of filled his spot on the factory karting team when he was moving into cars, and his dad was running everything at that point. And then later on in my karting career, I got to work with a guy named Mike Speed, who
Great
is
name.
Solid name. Well, his son was Scott Speed, who was the first American F1 driver in a long time.
Okay.
And you learn a lot. I learned a lot with them, and that really crafted me into it. But the business side of it, I would say I didn't get a really good understanding of it until like after my first year in cars, when you make the step into like a junior Formula Series.
And how old were you then?
16?
Okay.
15, 16. And it was, I loved it. It was great. And but it was tough because I was bouncing back and forth. You go into open wheel stuff. Open wheel is significantly more expensive than other forms of racing. I mean, it really is. And, so I bounced back and forth between open wheel stuff, some sports car stuff, had a lot of success in sports car stuff. It was great. But my passion was always the open wheel. And
for non-race car fans out there, open wheel meaning
they look like the torpedoes where the wheels hang out.
Yeah. So it's just the wheels, and it looks like an airplane with wheels, as opposed to like a NASCAR car, which it looks like a regular car just with a lot of stickers on it.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the thing. So I learned a lot about the business stuff, and I got to implement a lot of that. I mean, I got very lucky early on. I had a great agent, this guy Hans at CAA. He took great care of me, and these guys all tried to do this, and ultimately a lot of it still came down on me, because it came down to relationships and the sponsorship stuff and the brand side of things. It's me that they're working with at the end of the day, and so it's one of those things. I just did it for so long. And I've done it for long, and I've had incredible opportunities. I got to work with awesome brands, really great people. And the cool thing is that I get to keep all those relationships as I kind of go to this next, part in my life. But yeah, the business side of it in racing just got kind of tiring. And it's been, people have kind of like, close friends of mine have always kind of like, pushed at it or talked about it, and have said, do you want to keep doing this? Because I mean, I think people for a long time saw me just miserable, just struggling to like get it across the finish line, get stuff done. And this year, when this year essentially just really didn't come together the way that I wanted it to, I started to kind of refocus on some things, and early on in March, something happened, and I was like, this is kind of like one of these eye-opening moments. And, somebody I really cared about, really gave me the talking to. And, after she did that, I kind of took what she said to heart, and, it changed my kind of thought process on, is what I'm doing worth it? So I took a step back at that point. I still had a lot of irons in the fire on the driving side and all that stuff, but I started taking a step back from pursuing more of them. So I didn't
Mhm.
want to put more out there. And I started really focusing on the business side of it. And I still, at one point in time, do want to be back involved in racing,
Mhm.
but probably on the ownership side and like the driver development side. I do want to, I want to help create a better path for younger drivers and give, a better shot.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the tough things for me is I had a couple great opportunities, but I just didn't have the backing that I really needed to do what I wanted to do. And, when you realize that, it's one of those tough things. And so, so about early in March, I started to change stuff. I started to have some talks with, some guys here in town and even LA and New York. And I started kind of putting out the feelers about, hey, what do you think about me, kind of retiring from the racing gig full time and doing stuff like that. And I was pretty impressed with some of the responses, and that was kind of confidence inspiring.
This could be the next chapter.
Yeah. And they really did that. They came to the table and so I started like entertaining like some other opportunities and job stuff.
And that's one of the things that I talk about in my book, Agile Artists, and in this course that I do. It's called Inspire. There's 3 tenets of Inspire, and it's all geared around, or it's essentially designed all around going after a dream, a goal, and then defining what success means for whoever it is that's going through Inspire. So what I've discovered in my life, essentially discovered 3 things that have helped me, have been the pillars for my success as an actor, and now as I venture into some of the entrepreneurial stuff that I'm doing. The first one is there's a guy named Derek Seaver who he wrote this book, and he talked about your hell yeah, and he talks about if you find something that you are passionate about, and you can ask yourself the question, is this a hell yeah? If you can't definitively say yes, this is I would do anything I would do anything in life to fulfill on this dream, to do it. It's not like an achievement. It's more so like who I am. It's just, this is what I do, whether you're an artist or a race car driver or an actor. It doesn't matter if you have a stage or a racetrack with 100,000 fans. I've been driving with you over the past few days, and you are a race car driver on the highway. It's just in your blood. I can see why you're so successful.
Don't call me out like that,
exactly.
man.
But in terms of if you ask yourself, if this is not a hell yeah, then it should be a hell no, because life is too short to be wasting your time trying to please other people or do things for the wrong reasons. So the first one is discovering what that thing that you are passionate about. Second thing is your why. You got to understand, and you know this. I mean, that no one who is successful doesn't know this stuff. And it's all about what is that gas that you pour into your tank every day. What is the reason why you love to race? And I want to hear what that reason is. And then the third thing you touched on is the community and the support that you had to help get you to where you go. Because I don't care who you are, how talented you are, you need a community of people that see what's great within you and what's unique inside of you. And when people can see how passionate you are about something, what I've discovered is that they want to see you succeed. They want to help you succeed. The problem is a lot of the times we're too nervous about telling people what it is that we really want or what we need. And so no one really knows how to help us. They can see that we're struggling. They can see that we want to go in a certain direction. And they do the best. And our parents are number one at this, because most of the time parents care about us. They want to see us succeed. But if we don't tell them exactly what we need, they're going to try to help us and try to do things for us. And it comes across as trying to fix us. And that can be with our partners as well, relationship wise, romantic wise. If we don't communicate effectively with our community and tell people exactly what it is that we need, people can't read our minds. And it's hard for people to be able to show up the way in which we need them to unless we truly communicate that to them. So circling back to the definition of success, what does that mean for you? What does that look like?
So I'll give you this. It's a good question, and it's that definition for me has probably changed over the last probably 3 months. I really sat back and thought about things, and I've loved racing my whole life. I still will always love driving, getting behind the wheel of the car, doing that, the rush, the the feel, the physicality of it.
Yeah.
Everything that I love about it. It's kind of like my zen, even though it's very far from zen. But for us, that's kind of it. It's
Like
the
when you're in
routine.
the zone, it's almost as if like, what's the fastest you go as a race car driver?
Oh my God. I mean, it's so like my focus has always been the road course stuff. And, I think the fastest I've ever gone on road course is like 190 ish,
190.
which is moving.
That's
Yeah.
moving. That's moving. You like the reaction time, you have very little time to like correct it at anything. But when you start to create mastery in anything, from what I've read and even when I'm on stage and working on the biggest stages in the world, when you put the work in and you start to develop that confidence knowing that you are capable of what you are doing, it's as if time starts to slow down to the point where it doesn't even exist. And it's almost like an intuitive type of connection with, like you said, the Zen part of it, where there's effort, but there's non-effort. And when you can sit in that pocket of trusting that your skills and the work that you've put into it are there, and then just being present in the moment, that's the best feeling in the world. And it sounds like that's that Zen moment that you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the realization I had early in March. And that was, I started to really think about kind of where my priorities were. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is family. And it was something that, racing had, caused me to kind of neglect for a while. And, not just my own family and like relationship stuff and just in general. And, because you put so much pressure on yourself, and the idea of not necessarily failing at trying to get back in the car or doing something like that, but just knowing when to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come to that realization. I need to call this, and I need to focus on what's important, because I realized that, there was one thing that I truly loved more than driving a race car. And
What was that?
I I'll save that. I'll save that one.
Okay.
But it's one of those things that you reprioritize, and I had to be honest with myself. And that's the tough thing, is I started to realize that the racing side, everything I was doing for racing was I was being optimistic, but I went from being cautiously optimistic to unrealistically optimistic, always hoping someone would come through. And it was a lot of me waiting on other people to like fill their end of the bargain, do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it caused a lot of turmoil when it wouldn't happen. I was, it made me unhappy.
Yeah.
And, it made me neglect, people who consistently did do their end of the bargain. They were there for me. And so my kind of going forward is going to be, kind of focusing on that. And like, I'm the new kind of life direction, job type situation, keeping me in sports and entertainment, keeping me doing things that I'm good at and relationship wise, but a lot more structure. And one of the biggest things I'm happy to be able to do finally when I get home is take off the work hat and just kind of relax. And
make time for the people that are important to you. And
yeah, in a big way, and just be a lot more attentive. And and so that was the thing is you get to that point where it's like, it's not worth, your integrity and honesty and all these things that you're starting to sacrifice in yourself, your character. And I will always love racing. I'm not ruling out racing in the future in terms of, a couple fun races a year, but I mean, it's not something I'm pursuing anymore. It's just not. And I will always be around the racetrack. I'll always still do that. I'll always love it. But it's one of those things that, you realize what you want to do and what you want to be.
What kind of life you want to have.
Yeah. And so
it sounds like your definition. So what would you say your definition of success was when you were 25, and what would you say your definition
Definition of success
is
was
now?
championships, Indy 500 wins. And my definition of success now is a happy life and being able to enjoy things in life like I did during COVID, which I know it sounds surprising because the world was shut down, but being able to spend that time and to be as attentive as I was and always happy, and like I didn't have that weight on my back of like, we've got to get back to work on the racing stuff.
Yeah.
And I had just at that point, I had started another business with a partner of mine, the year prior, and it was up and rolling, and it's always fun to start a business before a global pandemic happens, but it survived. It's still going through, and the idea was great, and it's still in existence. And but at the end of the day, I think the best way to kind of move forward, and I want to make this known to other athletes, guys in my position, because I've met a lot of them, and I definitely held out longer than most. That's for sure. But I, with this new thing that I'm doing and kind of getting settled in, I'm going to be able to help a lot of these guys that are making the same transition. And the other thing too that I want to say is to a lot of the kind of corporations and companies, the people out there, ex-athletes, actors, people who have this work experience, these relationships, they're valuable.
Yeah.
And they do provide something to it. And I was very lucky that a lot of guys saw that value. And, I was lucky that I grew up in a business oriented family. But, my parents were always good about making time for myself and my little brother. And, I started to realize like I need to do that too.
Yeah.
And so, it's your coming to God moment kind of thing. And it's the last decision that I would say that I'd made on my own. I had a lot of help to make that decision, but when you're looking at how you're going to change your life, you have to make that conscious decision. And, for me, it was eye opening because people can change.
Yeah.
And, I was able to make a big change and a conscious decision, like going forward, not just about job, but about a lot of other things. And it all stemmed from one thing that was causing a lot of stress, one thing I was doing it. So like I said, I'm not going to be away from the racetrack per se.
Yeah.
I'm just chilling.
Yeah.
I'm going to be enjoying things, enjoying life, spending some time on some movie sets, which is going to be fun. But I think the 9 to 5 situation is a good way to put it, is going to be a nice change of pace going forward.
Yeah. I never really like the word regret because it just has this like negative connotation that something was wrong. I like to look at it as, what's the lesson to be learned in the experiences that we've had in our lives? If you could look back at your life, having had the experiences that you've had, would you have told your younger self any advice or insight to avoid some of the experiences that you had, or are you glad you had those experiences to learn those lessons the hard way?
Well, at the end of the day, hindsight's 20/20, as we all know. No, I mean, you would be inhuman to say that you don't have any regrets. And so, yes, I do have some absolute regrets. And looking back, I think the biggest thing that I would tell myself is, don't lose sight of yourself and kind of your self-awareness, your honesty, integrity, and your character as a person in pursuit of this dream.
Yeah.
And, so that's probably the only thing. I don't know if I would have necessarily changed a lot of the path in the last couple of years. There's definitely some things I would have done differently, but in terms of that, don't forget who you are as a person, how you were raised. And I'm thankful for all my experiences for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I can look back and I can, I'm definitely there's always going to be some regrets, and there's always going to be, situations where, I'm hoping to repair things. And
the great thing is you learn from those experiences.
You do.
And, I heard a quote this week. I can't remember who said it, but touching on what you were talking about, people do change. The quote went something like, "If you are the same person as you were 5 years ago, you're wasting your life."
Yeah.
And I think, it's so important that we learn to. I mean, the great thing about human beings is that we have the ability to adapt, and I think it's so important that we just take stock at our lives at certain points, because what got us to where we are at right now in our lives may have gotten us to where we are at, but is it going to take us to where we want to go? And I think it's very easy for us to get stuck in the way that things have always been done and the way we've always done it. And I think that one of the number one things that I think is a key component to success is constantly taking those moments to re-examine your life, like maybe every 3 to 4 months, maybe twice a year, where you just take a step back, like you did
Yep.
during COVID, and what I did when I left Los Angeles 5 years ago. I just got to a place in my life where I was in it. I was, going to all the Oscar parties and doing movies with, Sylvester Stallone, my boyhood idol, and all these like amazing actors, and I was in it. And I thought that was the definition of success. But once I got there, I was like, I'd come home from these parties and I'd be like looking myself in the mirror, and I was like, is this it? Like, there's just something that felt empty about it. And what I think, similarly to what you are talking about, I realized I was sacrificing a lot of time with family, sacrificing the things that personally I needed in order to feel fulfilled and happy. And I think it's brave and courageous to take that step back and admit that it's time to change. And that's not always easy.
No.
And so now that you're going through this transition of doing one thing that you've been focusing your whole life on, and this is what we were talking about the other day, where, a lot of athletes are in this situation where from, when they were 2 years old, there's a ball in their hand and they're throwing it or shooting it or in a race car driving, and you get to a point in your life where it's going to end. And for someone who's been as successful as you are, doing something that you love to do, what has that been like now at 33 years old, looking at stopping doing that and doing something different in your life? And what advice would you give to some of these athletes who are facing that same situation where they had it big, they were in the limelight, and now they're in the sunset of their career? What advice would you give someone who's experiencing that?
So I'll give you kind of like my own thing. So I mean, I realized this was kind of the March realization, is that I could spend, the next 7-8 years, maybe till I'm 40, 41, still doing the racing thing, still pursuing it, doing that. But it's going to stop. There's a hard ending on that.
What's the average like retirement age of a race car?
Probably like 44.
Oh wow, okay.
43. So you get a good decent run.
Okay.
But like, so realistically, like I looked at that and I said, even best case scenario, no issues doing that, I could do it for the next thing. There was still something else that I would rather have had, because that's the rest of my life, and I can be happy doing that. And then in terms of work, I've got options, and which is sweet. It's the best way to put it. And
business
I've
opportunities.
And the offer that I've just recently accepted is great, and I'm getting settled in there, and it's a cool gig for sure. And like I said, keeps me in the world a bit, but it also allows me to go home and just kind of finally relax. So yeah, I mean, I came to that realization, and I had started making some changes earlier on, and I wish I'd done some changes a little sooner, but I can't necessarily live with the regret of how I came to that decision. But it's definitely going to be one of the last decisions that I make solely on my own in my life, which is a good thing. But yeah, no, I'm actually pretty happy about it. It's been like I said, it's a big weight lifted to kind of sit there and go, you know what? it's time for a drastic change.
Mm.
And like I said, I had a lot of support, a lot of guys who wanted to do that. So my thing with other athletes, entertainers, people that are figuring out what they're doing, this and that, there's nothing wrong with change. And if it is affecting your character and your happiness and things like that, then you need to change. And I was lucky that I had somebody very special that kind of, drilled that into me.
Honest and authentic about who you are, what you're doing, and reminding you what's important in life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes we do need those wake up calls to snap us back.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can't get singularly focused on accomplishing something and why we want to do it. In terms of your racing, because it is a dangerous sport, I noticed on your you have a tattoo on your wrist.
You got some number tattoos and some stuff. And I've had some friends of mine that have,
those are the numbers of your.
Well, though this is something else. But no, I've had some friends like 2011, we lost a guy named Dan Weldon and, I was there at that race and I was in the younger junior series at that point.
Yeah.
And I just remember I think it was probably the first time I ever was like, whoa, actually second guess that thing. I mean, when that happened, didn't really know what to do. I got the word early on from one of the guys that was, in our team suite and told us, hey, this is the deal. And I remember being catatonic and driving back it happened in Vegas, driving back literally that night, middle of the night from Las Vegas to LA. And it is a dangerous sport. But the thing is that because of those incidents, those things like that, they were essentially freak accidents. The safety in the sports has dramatically increased. And so just in the last 3 years, they've had the implementation of the halo on the cars, which is essentially it protects your head because open wheel cars, there's no windshield, things like that.
Yeah.
Now the race cars, have the halos and the windscreens and they're definitely warmer to drive inside because it's not the same amount of airflow, but in terms of safety, you ask any of the guys doing it, they, you got a better feeling wrecking at 200, even though it's still, that kind of thing still hurts, than, you do in your street car at, 40.
But do you think about when you get into that car?
No, you never think about it.
You never think about?
Not at all.
Okay.
If you did, you wouldn't be able to push it to the point where you do.
Okay. So this is all about then focusing on the goal at hand. And this is where we can get tripped up in life, is that this is where a lot of people that I talk to get tripped up in, is because they focus on the things that could go wrong, the things that, what failure looks like. And it really sounds like, from someone who's, this is what you do for a living, having your focus on what is the task at hand, what is the goal, and what is it that you need to do in order to fulfill on that goal, and just not even entertaining anything outside of that.
It's you got to remember, most of us were doing it from the time we were, this big. So it's second nature. You're not really thinking about that. And if an accident does happen, kind of things, you just kind of take your hands off the wheel and you're like, oh shit.
And here we go. That's what I did at the Grand Prix. I turned in, and this was amazing. If you ever have the opportunity to go to racing school, Willow Springs Racing racetrack. It's about an hour north of Los Angeles. I got to participate, as I was saying, in the Celebrity Grand Prix. It's the day before the Long Beach Grand Prix. And there's 20 of us that got to train with Al Unser Jr., Kyle Petty Jr. And
it's a good crew.
Yeah, it was amazing what they can do with a race car.
Yep.
But what fascinated me was, I think as human beings, we all feel that, we intuitively think or feel that there are limitations to what we can do. And when I got in the car for the first time, and they're like, okay, get in the track, and you start racing around, and I get up to maybe 85. These are 185 horsepower Scions.
Yeah.
They're not they're not beast, 500 horsepower race cars. But it's all about learning how to carry the momentum and learning the science of the apex of the curve and how to accelerate into the turn. And it's counterintuitive because when you are going into a turn, you feel like, okay, I need to slow down and put on the brake, but they would teach you to push your foot down on the gas pedal as you're accelerating out of the turn. So it's all this kind of counterintuitive stuff. And, I'm going around and then one of the race car instructors came in to the car. He's like, all right, you get in the passenger seat now. And we were coming around this turn that all morning I was just slowing down to go through. And we start getting to this turn and I'm expecting us to slow down. He starts speeding up and I'm just I'm like starting to white knuckle it. I'm like, whoa. And we're going into this turn. I swear I thought we were going to roll. And he took that turn and then just hit it perfectly. And we shot out the curve like a slingshot. And it was one of these things where it was like, holy shit, I didn't realize that was possible. And so sometimes we need people in our lives to show us what's possible and to push us past those limits that we self-impose on ourselves because what we think. And it can be scary. That's why if you truly want to elevate in life, it's important to have people who have been where you want to go, who you trust, and you just go for the ride. And it's amazing what we are capable of doing if we just explore outside of our, like what we think is our comfort zone. And then that new reality becomes your comfort zone and you have this expanded sense of self-identity. Have you had moments in your life where you came up against an obstacle and you thought it wasn't possible to do it, and then somehow, some way, someone pushed you or encouraged you to go faster than that? Similarly to Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile record back in, I think it was 1954. They thought that it was humanly impossible to run faster or to break the 4-minute mark for running a mile. Doctors said the heart would literally explode and you would die. So that was the mindset limitation that was imposed on runners. And Roger was like, no, I think I can do this. And after he did it, within, I think it was like 9 months after he broke the, or like within a year after he broke the record, 9 other people broke that sub 4-minute mile marker. Just showing you that the power of our own mind limitations can have on us. Have you had any of those moments in your life where you were like, I didn't realize that this was possible and here it is?
I mean, in the car, I mean, yes, you have that all the time. Like when you're growing up and like you first get in the race car and even the go-karts, you're on the radio with guys and they say, listen, you need to hold that thing flat through this corner, full throttle, like do that thing. And getting to that point is like, oh crap. Like you're like, and then finally, once you do it, you're like, oh, all right. Then it becomes repetition again. So that's one of those things, out of the car. That was kind of the deal with racing. I was so just laser focused on it. And my mind was just so stuck on doing it. And then, I came to that decision that this is what I was going to do. I was going to kind of leave that behind and move on, and it's freeing and it's good. I feel like I got myself back again. I'm happy about it, and it's a good deal all around. And so, like I said, my goal is to, help other guys that have been in that situation, whatever it might be, to do the same thing. And I think that, the workforce in general is about to have a big change. Yeah.
It is. Definitely. And so with all this AI technology and, people are scared, but this is, an opportunity. When there's change, there's a lot of opportunity.
There is. And I think that right now relationships are going to matter a lot more than they have sometimes in the past, especially with the AI thing. Because I think that people are going to get real sick of talking to a robot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And people think that, jobs are going to be lost over, the coming years. And this is why more so now than ever, I think it's important that you take a look at, opportunities that are now starting to pop up. Otherwise, unfortunately, we can sit around and complain that, we want to go back to the good old days or, back to the way it was, but that's just not the reality of things. And you can't fight change. I mean,
no.
And it's important to just
I tried that. I tried fighting the change. I did that for a really long time. And it finally got to the point where it really started to wear on me and potentially cost me something that I care more about than anything else.
Yeah.
And, that's one of those deals. You sit back and you're like, all right, like,
you gotta learn to ride the wave.
Yeah. You got to do that. So, and that's what I'm doing. I'm enjoying it right now. But I mean, like I said, I'm not, ruling out some fun races in the future. I'm not going to be out of the car world or anything like that. And I'll still do some stuff with actors. Actually, I took, speaking of karting and actors and everything else, a good buddy of mine, Milo Ventimiglia, was getting ready to do a movie, The Art of Racing in the Rain. And he called me up and he's like, hey, like, what do you think about getting in like a car? Like, I want to get some stuff. And I'm like, dude, I got you. And I took him out to Fontana and I took him karting all day. And I said, if you want to learn about race car driving and how these guys start. And I was like, you start from the bottom. Yeah.
Is that okay?
So, but like the real go-karts, not the ones that the rental ones that everyone does, like the real racing karts that kids are competing against each other in. And I took him out in that. And like, I think at the end of the day, he was like, dude, wow, I'm going to be sore tomorrow.
Yeah.
He didn't realize it. But he's awesome. And he had, he wanted that approach to things and he wanted to learn, like what it takes. And he's friends with other drivers too. But there's a couple guys that have done it. I know Tom Cruise is a huge car guy. Years ago, I remember when he got to drive one of the F1 cars that Red Bull had supplied, and he was actually pretty damn quick. So it's good. There's guys that have, abilities they don't know what they have yet. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm figuring out some of these other new abilities and stuff that's outside of the car and the racing business itself. But yeah, that's
So you'd say your why when you were 25 years old was to win the races and to have all the accolades.
Yep.
And what's your why now to get out of bed in the morning? What fuels your fire?
It's gonna be, the end of the day, the beginning of the day, I should say. It's gonna be what's, most important to me in life, which is gonna be, family and relationships and stuff. That's kind of, that's where I'm at. And work is always going to be work, and I'm not worried about it. But those are the things that matter the most. And I'm super excited about kind of the way things are going now. And
let's make some movies, man.
Dude,
let's produce and make some good stuff.
There's some good opportunities here in Tennessee.
Yeah. So I'm excited. And this is one of the things where, when you are stepping into what you really want to be doing in life and start living more in alignment with your dream and your goals, the universe has an amazing way of having people like this show up in your life. And I definitely feel like this is a new friendship, but I think this is going to be a very fruitful one, and
it's going to be good.
One where we remind each other to slow down, take those breaks, connect with the people that matter most to us, that fill our cups up so that we can go back out into the world and want to make that difference that we know we're capable of making. And I'm grateful that I met you, man.
Yeah, dude, likewise.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you'll be back in town again.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be back. Yes. That being said, the last part of Coffee with Colin, I like to ask my guests their Picticular Pick 6. And this part of the show is brought to you by Picticular, which is my buddy Todd Courtney's app. It's all about curating movies that you like. And it's kind of like a dating app combined with IMDb, where you can swipe left or right on the movie suggestions, and then it will learn what movies you like and suggest movies that are in line with the ones that you've been liking and swiping. And then you can share the movies that you like as your hit list. And then if you have a favorite actor like Colin Egglesfield,
there you go.
You can type in your favorite actor's name, and then all their movies pop up, and it'll show you exactly what platforms you can watch them on. So
that's cool.
A lot of people ask, like, Colin, where can I watch, that movie? And as an actor, I mean, I'm not in the distribution business. I'm getting into it, but I mean, it's so hard to know where movies are on, like whether it's on Amazon or Netflix or whatever. So this app, Picticular, download it now if you haven't. if you don't have it on your phone, and you can find out exactly where you can watch your favorite movies. So that being said, the 6 questions for the particular pick 6. First question is, what is your favorite movie of all time?
So I'm going to be in line with a lot of other race car drivers on this one. We all love Top Gun. It's just the original
Days
Top
of
Gun.
Thunder.
No, I mean Days of Thunder is great, but I mean we're in the sport, so it can be a little cheesy to us.
Yeah.
No, Top Gun's
Top Gun.
Top Gun is
First
has
one
been
or Maverick?
The first one.
Okay.
The first, the original one. I mean, that's like I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen it at this point. I mean, I like this one of the best soundtracks of all time.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably overall one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
If not, it's probably the favorite. I've seen that more than anything else.
You want to do a little Kenny Loggins for us?
Oh hell no!
Highway into the
nobody want to hear me sing.
No, okay. Second question is, what was your favorite movie when you were growing up as a kid?
So I have always liked movies that have like some sort of meaning or things like that. I've always liked Bagger Vance. I love the way Redford does movies. And I thought that's probably like one of my favorite Matt Damon roles of all time. Like I think he crushed that role. Obviously Will Smith is Will Smith. He's great.
Yeah.
But I think Matt Damon, really, really crushed that role. And I love that movie. And if you haven't seen that in a while, great. I also love golf. So
how would you describe when you say you love Robert Redford's style of film? How would you describe that?
Meaningful.
Okay.
He does movies that I think are kind of, there's always like a message in there, and there's like they have it's hard to describe, but they have like a feeling to them that it's very unique. It's like somewhat profound, and he does that and all that stuff. And I thought Bagger Vance was still one of my favorite movies, and I've made plenty of people watch it if they haven't yet.
Yeah. Yeah, what I love about this segment is that I haven't seen that movie in like 20 years.
Now you might want to go watch it,
and it's like that's another one that got to go rewatch.
Yep.
So third question is, what is your favorite romantic comedy or romance movie?
Okay, I feel like again I'm in line with a lot of other guys on this one. I think How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is definitely. Okay. It's definitely like a dude favorite.
Yeah.
It's the easiest one to watch, and Kate Hudson's great, and McConaughey killed it in that. But
they have great chemistry.
Yeah, great chemistry. So that movie's just funny.
Yeah.
That's an easy watch.
Okay. And what is your favorite straight comedy?
So that's a tough one. I think again it might be Happy Gilmore. I like golf again, but I love Happy Gilmore.
I want to hear some noise. Where's all the...
I mean, that movie is just golden.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben Stiller is great in it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is or who is your favorite actor or male character in a movie?
So that's kind of a tough question. I'm the guy that looks at the kind of the movie as a whole. And in terms of like probably one of the most like I appreciate a role for its difficulty and what the actor goes through to do it, and like what they have to put themselves through to do that. Like I have a lot of respect for that. So that alters my decision too, because I know like training for racing, like what these guys do to do this stuff. And I think like it's kind of a combo. What Jared Leto and McConaughey did for Dallas Buyers Club is the most insane thing I've ever seen. And like what those dudes were willing to put themselves through.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a commitment to their craft, and they killed it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have always loved Robert De Niro in Casino. Like that whole movie, great the way he kind of like narrates it, and the great performance. Like I love the mob movies too. So and that's pretty cool.
And last question, who's your favorite actress or female character?
That's a tough one. again, I think it comes down to like, some of the roles and things that they've done. I think Julia Roberts is great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she takes on some cool roles and she kills it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What I love about her is that she's always vulnerable in her roles. No matter,
she does a great job.
I mean, she's gorgeous, but the reason why you fall in love with her is just because she's so authentic and real and vulnerable. She wears her heart on her sleeve.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lesson that I think we can all learn. The more authentic we can be in our lives, you give people the opportunity to see who you really are.
Hmm.
But I think we're a lot of the times afraid of showing the world who we really are. So we put up, this Instagram version of ourselves, and we don't let people truly in to see who we are because we're afraid if they see all the craziness that we are, they're going to run for the hills. But one of the things I've learned, and I think is so important in life, is that the more that you can just be yourself and own all of your crazy and your the things about yourself that you think are those bad parts that you want to hide. Those are the parts that when people see them, uh, create some connection and relatability because it makes other people know that they're not alone in whatever it is that they're struggling and dealing with. And I learned that first and foremost when I don't know if you knew I had testicular cancer and I was on all my children at the time, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where 3 weeks into my radiation treatment, I just broke down on set because I couldn't hold in going through this experience on my own. And once I finally started telling people, it's amazing how people show up to support you in those darkest moments when you feel like the last thing you want to do is share those dark moments and those dark things about yourself that you feel like people are going to run away from. But
it's definitely, it's tough. I mean, it's
tough.
It's one of those things because you sit back and you think about it. You want to put on a good front, and especially it's interesting how you are almost in a weird way more guarded with stuff like that. Especially like in sports, you keep your emotions to yourself. You don't do that, but you're more guarded sometimes around the people you care the most about, and you're not always communicative. And if you were, they'll be there for you. They'll be there to help, and it makes things better. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets. And it's one of those things, and I'm the kind of guy that is dedicated, and I've focused, and I'll fight for what I want and what I believe. And but not, you shouldn't always have to do that. And it's a great example of one of those situations, like, with you and things that I've dealt with is, you let your pride get in the way a little bit. And it's interesting how it's usually with the people you care the most about versus randos.
Yeah. Tough lessons to learn, but
so
it's, and as men, I think this is something we struggle with. Because we just want to prove to the world that we can't
get out of our own way half the time.
Yeah. We don't need anyone, but we do.
All day long.
Ladies, we need you.
It's the truth.
And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man.
Last question I like to ask my guests before we sign off is, what inspires you?
So, that's one of those things that kind of transformational question, I guess I should say that, but it's always been, for me, the love of the sport is what inspired me. That love of that feeling, driving the car, and that's what did it. And now for me, it's a different love. It's a different thing that inspires me and motivates me. And I'm happy about that. It's a good feeling. It's a good change. But I'm when it comes to work ethic and putting that effort in, I'm definitely one of those guys who's gonna do it. And now it's just a different direction.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm excited about this new direction you're headed into, and
it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a good time together on that.
Yeah. And I just want to acknowledge you for, for just being as courageous and as crazy as you have been to get in that car and fulfill on your dream and your passion, and recognizing and realizing, when it's important to accept the things that you may have not put as a priority. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that, own up to it, and keep putting our best foot forward. And I'm excited to be putting my best foot forward with you in the future, creating some cool stuff.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. Phinny, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You got to teach me how to not smash into the wall next time I get on the racetrack.
We'll work on that for sure.
Sounds good. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here for the premiere episode of Coffee with Colin Season 6. I'll see you on the next one.